So good afternoon, everybody. All the Winnebago County Mental Health Board meeting for the month of February. So the first thing that we're going to do is have roll call. Marietta Body. Gabriel Bradshaw.
Here.
Dr. Ed Copeland. Here. Dr. Terry Giardini. Here. Dr. Bill Gorski. Richard Clark, present. Margie Lindmark.
Present.
Tim Neighbors. Jeff Nielsen.
Here.
Dr. Amanda Penny. I'm Mohammed Yunus. Jason Holcomb is here. Thank you. Along with, we have 3 staff members, Emily, Alex, and Chelsea, with us this afternoon. We have no public comment, but we do have 2 presentations for this afternoon. The first one is Rosecrans Empowerment Hub. This is we're talking about an accelerator award presentation. So do we have someone? Okay. We have several.
There's another one here.
She's on the drives.
Okay. I don't think I need a mic. Yeah. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Craig Stallings. I serve as the regional vice president of residential living in Rosecrans. And Ms. Rob, she is our director of mental housing.
So what we're looking at today is a proposal for our empowerment hub. We want to be able to, transform lives through support and community. We want to build more stability into our housing programs that are already established. Evidence-based approach. So we have a permanent supported housing program that we already established. It's a housing first program. So as far as housing first goes, individuals that come into that program have to have serious mental illness and have literally been homeless before being placed in that program. The good thing about housing first is it eliminates a lot of barriers. Clients don't have to be sober. There's no criminal background restrictions when they come into that program. But one of the things is they don't have to participate in services. And we want them to participate in services to help keep them stably housed in those programs. So we do know that when individuals participate in programming and supportive services, that they have a 90% result in staying housed. The clients that are currently in our programming, at least 60% of them are currently actively engaged in services, and that service is already provided by the WARE Center, where a community-based individual goes into their apartment or sees them in the community to make sure that they're engaged in services. The other clients in the program are not currently engaged in services, and like I said, it's not part of their housing that they have to stay engaged, but we know that if we provide those services to them, they're more likely to be engaged. And if we can go there to do that, they can stay engaged. So the goal really of the program is to provide on-site access to these support services. We've already hired staff to be there 7 days a week. We want to have a trauma-informed space for them, increase their housing stability through engagement and support. So with case management there on site, we want to have group activities there and provide some social activities so they can meet with each other, have some peer support, and even do social things in the community. So the impact of this that we see is that they would have immediate access to supports right on site within some of our already established buildings. Our goal, our target for that is to have 75% of the residents visit this empowerment hub and kind of keep track of that with daily logs. We want to know that they're engaged in support services. We want to have a percentage of residents engaged in regular programming and support services, 80%, and keep track of that through our documentation. We want to improve skills and social connectedness, and we're going to offer those quarterly recreational and social opportunities that we would go out to the public, do some activities, and take attendance with that. And then we want to be able to really have them remain in their permanent supported housing program. So we want to see more housing retention by being on site to provide these services.
To add a little context to being on site,
Yeah.
we believe that increased familiarity, increased opportunities for engagement. You know, right now, with some of our programming, we're coming to individuals' apartments, we take them out to the community for other activities. But that happens maybe once or twice a week, you know, and depending on the severity of the case, maybe a little bit more. But we believe by having staff on site, seeing those residents every day, that's going to increase engagement. You know, just by the simple fact of familiarity. We also know, selfishly, I would say, when our team is meeting with our clients, our residents, I should say, we feel that there's a better opportunity to engage them also, whether they get some teams that may not have as much familiarity with them, may not have that. You know, being able to go into their apartments and see how they're living is a little bit different than coming to an office, telling you how they're living. So we just feel that this would definitely increase that. We know that we have 4 different apartments right now under 4 different models, if you will. And one of those models is what Melissa's speaking to. And we feel that it has the best chance to better support our clients. And we want to replicate that without some of the same limitations as some of the grants that we have. But want to replicate the structure, if you will, and actually be able to take all of our resources and leverage all the resources what I was looking for, and combine to one housing support team. So even though we have different programs, different models, so to speak, this whole team can reach out and meet our residents at different locations, and then have a place to work from and be able to consistently see them.
And the way we'd like to have it set up is that there will be some office space in there, but then also, we already have, because we're using an existing apartment, there's kitchen space there, so we can help teach them daily living skills. Individuals need help with cooking, learning those skills. We would have area for groups to be run, therapeutic groups, even just social care support groups. And then we'd like to put some computers in there so that we can help individuals. We have a lot of individuals in the program who would like assistance with looking for employment, and so we can help navigate that with them in that existing space. So the resources that we already have is that we do have some space in 2 existing Rosecrans owned apartment buildings that we could utilize for this space. We do have trained clinical staff that we would like to have there on site then 7 days a week to provide that full coverage. We do already have collaborative support for this program. The City of Rockford single point of entry is where the referrals come for this supported housing program. And obviously the Northern Illinois Homeless Coalition. The Shelter Plus Care program is a collaboration between the City of Rockford and Rosecrans for this housing. We also already have some park district grants that we utilize mostly in the summertime, a little bit in the fall, that we would like to be able to do some of those activities in the community. We already have those grants that we get, so we can already have those activities planned for these clients. We have a lot of support from the City of Rockford, supporting the idea behind this program and what we can really do to grow the engagement with the clients. And then you guys did ask for some clarification. Once we sent the proposal in, you asked about how many vans we purchased. The plan is to have 2 vans to transport clients in the community and staff, at least a minimum of 1 staff per location each day. We do have additional staff that should help with recreational activities based on client staff ratio. Obviously, if we're taking 10 clients in the community, we'd want to have more than just 1 staff assisting them in that activity. You asked, will the facility provide transitional or permanent housing? This is a permanent housing program. So we do have individuals already in the program that continue to get referrals as individuals may graduate into the community. But this isn't transitional. Once they move into this program, as long as they're compliant with the rules for the city and the program, the HUD program itself, they can stay there a lifetime. And then what percentage of clients would achieve permanent housing? So we did look at our clients that have moved out of the program over the last 2 years. 7 clients have discharged from the program. 57% of them were discharged to permanent housing. The goal of this proposal is to increase that, so that when individuals, if they are discharging from the program, would move to a permanent housing location, or they would stay housed within our program.
You say that there was a requirement that the individuals be sober and no legal currently?
No requirement.
I'm sorry,
No requirement.
no requirement.
Right.
You mentioned at the front that it was evidence-based. What model are you choosing from, and what are you going to be attempting to replicate?
Right, so the evidence-based practice is the permanent supportive housing program that we want to, I mean, we already have clients that are eligible and receiving those services as far as the housing piece goes, but we know that if they could engage in those supports that we want to build around them, they can increase the likelihood that they would stay engaged in housing.
So if you're losing 40% now, what is the usual reason on why they are leaving?
Sure. To be completely honest, we have had some clients pass away in the last couple of years, natural causes, and other clients may leave the program due to not just in the Rosecrans owned apartments, but in the community apartments that we have due to evictions. If they are causing property damage or things like that with other landlords in the community, and those are the things that we really want to be more preventative in helping those clients so that they can stay housed rather than reactive once we receive issues from the landlords.
Yeah, I use the word context again, so I want to really emphasize, we're focusing on 2 of our apartment buildings that we have clients in, but our housing program really extends out into the community, well over 100 so clients who are living in apartments or in houses owned by landlords, and that we provide supportive services to those that we can. So it's much bigger than our housing program, it's much bigger than this. And eventually we want to be able to expand out and be able to reach some of those individuals a little bit more often as well. But we really want to concentrate right now on our 2 owned apartments where we feel that we can make a big difference.
What's your current waiting list for your other programs? Other housing programs?
For the other housing programs, we do currently have some openings in our supported housing program, which is separate from the permanent supportive housing program. It's another grant that we have. Our supervised program currently. One opening currently in the supervised program.
One opening?
Yes.
But how many people are currently on the waiting list?
On the waiting list, currently we have no clients waiting that are in active application process, but we do have some openings.
What would be the difficulty of morphing this program into the existing programs?
I would say, in short, some of the grant restrictions, and some of the, for instance, when Melissa said that we do not hold their legal status against them or use of substances, that is a criteria that has to be abided by with certain grants. And so we have some of that flexibility to do that. We don't want to necessarily have all the restrictions of some of the grants, but we'll be able to model what's some of the best practices and some of the things that we find effective to be able to utilize well.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because Ware used to have a number of rehabilitation programs that are similar to what it is you're describing. So I'm just curious as to like, where are they? Are they no longer existent, or like what?
No, we do, yeah, we do currently have those. We do have a supervised residential program that is 24 hour a day, 7-day a week staff by our clinicians. And then we also have a supported housing program that is 38 beds that is staffed throughout the week as well. And so with this particular program, Shelter Plus Care, rental subsidy program, those clients are permanently housed, but they, like I said initially, they don't have to receive those support services. But we know that if we make ourselves present and we're there and we're kind
So
of
this is an add-on, this is an add-on
shelter plus care.
to shelter plus care.
Correct, yes.
All right,
It would be there to provide those support services.
so really what you're saying is give them more support, and you should see better rehabilitation among the people that are in the house.
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's also fair to say, as much as add-on enhanced services, we also, this is still a very vulnerable population. And when we have individuals in apartments that don't have any supervision or any type of staff support, that increases their vulnerability. By adding staff to these apartments and being there 7 days a week, we hope to reduce some things that some of our clients have been subjected to. Also, it increases our ability to have awareness for those who may be struggling that we don't necessarily see. As you asked about, individuals that may be in the program, we also have those who may relapse or engage in substances. You don't necessarily see that all the time if you're victim to your apartments, or victim to your office. But again, that increased familiarity allows us for quicker intervention, quicker support, enhanced support to help provide services.
Will your goals be set up in a way that when we visit you a year or so from now, we can actually see where you started and where you are now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll have progress with documentation, but we do want to keep attendance logs, visitor logs, logs of like our groups and our activities to see that engagement level.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I have one thing to say. Let me preface my comment with, Rosecrans has been a staple in our community for a very long time. I mean, long as I can remember. And they've done wonderful things. But there's always another program, another program, another program. My colleague, Ms. Brian Shaw, said you can maybe morph that into the other programs. Is it possible to do that without having to ask for even more monies? When I saw the proposal, and I keep seeing people wanting vans, I have a problem with that, okay? I want to see the money being spent on the program, and I understand you gotta transport people, they gotta get this, gotta get that. But I want to see the money being spent directly. We're here to combat mental illness. I want to see it going directly towards that, not having to buy all the things on the outside. So, again, she brought up a good point of putting it together. Is it possible to do that?
Actually, I think that's what we're saying. We are talking about leveraging all of our services to try to replicate, to be a little bit more replicative of each other, to provide these for this population that doesn't currently have that.
Mm-hmm.
The funding that we're looking for is to help with those things that rarely isn't supported by some of our grants, things of nature. We are already leveraging the services that we can bill for, provide service. We're doing that anyway, and going to continue to do that. We really irrespective of this. What this allows us to do is to enhance that presence in the building. It gives us some of that capital so that we can be able to be there. Our goal doesn't change. We're going to continue to provide the services for these clients and continue to increase it. Our goal is to really expand our housing support team well into the communities, to address those other 110 clients that we talked about. But we have to take some baby steps.
Okay. Thank you.
You said staff 7 days a week. Is that one shift, 7 days a week?
At this point, yes. And again, I would love to grow. Now, again, there's a little bit difference between the residential program and support housing. As let's talk about one of our programs, supervised housing, that's 24/7. That's a different model under a different brand, formerly known as SILA, but as supervised housing. We're talking about supportive housing. So these are individuals who are more independent, so not required for 24/7, but we definitely feel that increasing it beyond 8 hours a day, 5 days a week is necessary. We'd love to get to a point of doing 3 shifts. Not sure how feasible that is, at least not in the near future, but we do feel increased support is necessary.
And to create the hub, you would lose some space in the buildings, assuming you lose, what would you lose?
Some space that we're actually not currently using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes, the damage that's done to the apartments by the time an individual moves out is astronomical. You know, in some areas, it's almost not worth to, put more funding into it. And quite honestly, this is some of the space that we're looking at. You know, we have some unused space, we can really put in some, work into fixing it up, and turn it into office space. And that's the goal.
So you have an apartment, and that you want to use?
Yes, sir.
You didn't follow up what Terry said about the vans. You didn't talk about transportation or what you plan on doing there.
Yeah, we really want to utilize those vans, like I said, to do the community activities, but really just help with day-to-day stuff, right? If clients have to go to appointments, if clients need to go to the grocery store, if clients need to go to court, that there would be a staff person there that would help be able to transport those clients to the things they need to go to.
So if there's one staff on site, would that staff leave then and drive someone and lock up evacuate all the other consumers and then take the person to their appointment, or how
No,
would that work?
they're living in their own apartments. What we're providing is an office space in the building, so would you lock up the office? Yes.
Yes.
No, there's no need to evacuate the tenants, because those are their apartments.
Because if I was reading it right, it was like it reminded me of a community space, like a smaller version of the Jubilee Center perhaps,
Sure.
where people could come, have some community, maybe have some activities and things. But then if it's one staff, they're gonna be doing double activity.
Right, yeah. And we do have a team, so the idea behind it would be that there could still be a staff on site, even if there was a staff going into the community.
Do the residents have like primary case managers?
Some of them do. Some of them are
Case
engaged
managers
in
ever come?
services already. Most of them are not.
Okay. And then the case managers that they do have, do they ever help with transportation to those appointments?
They do, yeah. So we just like the idea of, that we would be there daily to help with those things, whereas maybe the services they're receiving right now are once or twice a week. So, and then, kind of what Rick spoke to that they're familiar with the housing staff, right? They're familiar with me personally, because I go around and see each one of them every month. So I already have that rapport, and then we can continue to provide those support services with something that they're comfortable seeing.
Okay, so they would have two options then. They would have either their case manager or this empowerment hub staff that they could go to for transportation. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
And our second presentation today is from the Winnebago County Juvenile Detention Counseling Center.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Debbie Jarvis. I'm the Director of Court Services, and I have with me Julie McCrae-Grotto, who is the Superintendent for our Juvenile Detention Center. Some of you have had the opportunity to come out to our detention center and to see our facilities. So I thank you for those who have had that opportunity, and want to let you know if anybody else would like to do that, you are more than welcome. Please just contact me and I can help you with those arrangements. The court services department for the county is actually 5 different divisions. So when we talk about the juvenile detention center, that is just one of those 5 divisions. The other divisions include the adult probation, juvenile probation, pretrial, the resource intervention center, and the juvenile detention. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is our juvenile detention center. As you all know, we already received some funding from the mental health board for our therapists that we have out at the juvenile detention center. So this is an ask that is outside of that. So our juvenile detention center was built in 1992 as a 32-bed facility. They shortly realized that they needed to have additional space, and in 1995 they added on 16 additional beds. We are still currently at that 48 bed capacity, although that is actually not accurate, as you'll see, because of space limitations. We've had to limit that due to needing room for our therapists to be able to have an office space. Our detention center provides secure detention for our youth who have been charged with serious felony offenses. All of the youth who are in the detention center are there under court order. They've been found by the judge to be at risk to be out in the community, either a risk to themselves or a risk to the community. Our detention center can house youth between the ages of actually 10 and up to the age of 20. By no means do we have many youth in our detention center that are under the age of 13. We do have 13-year-olds, but actually by statute, if a youth is younger than 13, then we have to try and look at some other alternatives in the community. If those are not available, then they could be lodged at that young age, but that is by far a rarity for us. Really, our population is between 14 and 17. That is by far the majority of the kids who we have in the center. The detention center operates on a variety of different standards and by statute. So the first portion here talks about the different statutes that provide the authority for us to operate. There's the County Shelter Care and Detention Act, the Juvenile Court Act, and then it's important to understand that the detention center operates under the authority of the chief judge. Operational standards for detention, so those are the standards by which we have to operate in order to have a detention center. The Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, also known as AOIC, is the governing body who provides guidelines for all parts of the court system, including probation, detention, things like that. But they also oversee the judges, court reporters, trial court, all of those kinds of things. They have detention standards that we have to follow. Every other year, they have staff who come in and do an audit of our detention center, and then they provide a report talking about their findings. The other area that provides standards that we have to follow is the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice. On the adult side, that's IDOC, that's the Department of Corrections. In the juvenile world, it's called IDJJ. So they also have standards we have to follow, and they give us an annual audit, and the results are published for both of those on both of the websites for those agencies. I'm sorry, this is kind of small, but hopefully you can see. I wanted to give you an overview of what our population looks like at the detention center. So you can see in 2020, we had intakes of 324 juveniles. So throughout the entire year, 324 juveniles were brought in. The average length of stay in 2020 was 27 days, and the average population per day was 23.6 youth. As you can see, there's some fluctuation in the numbers over the years. 2021, those numbers are a little lower. I think COVID had some impact to that. And as you can see, as we move down, we're jumped down to 2024. We just compiled those numbers for the last year. We had 395 intakes. The average length of stay was 30 days, and our average population is 30.9 youth. So when we talk about that average length of stay, by far, the majority of those kids are pre-adjudication, so they have not yet been found guilty of an offense. On occasion, we might have a youth who is there after adjudication. Let's say perhaps they were sentenced to the Illinois Department of Corrections, which is prison for our youth. If they're sentenced there, it may take a short amount of time, a week usually, for the Illinois Department of Corrections to receive them. We have to make an appointment, there's a process, and we have to go through that. So in those circumstances, those youth could already be sentenced, but by far the majority of the kids that we have in the detention center are awaiting sentencing. Currently in our juvenile detention center, we are able to offer behavioral health services, and so that's what I want to talk primarily about with you guys, are those services that we provide to the detention at the detention center. Because of the funding through the Mental Health Board, we have 3 full-time therapists that are contracted through Freedom Behavioral Health. And then we also have 1 part-time therapist that comes to us through Gross Grants. They have a grant called a Mental Health Juvenile Justice Grant. So between those 4 therapists, we have 140 hours of therapeutic services for our youth per week. Rosecrans provides court-ordered mental health assessments and telepsychiatry care for our youth. So I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit, but let's say, for example, Freedom, who are our therapists at the detention center, they identify that perhaps there's a psychiatric need for those kids. They collaborate with that therapist from Rosecrans, and then Rosecrans is the one who helps to facilitate getting the psychiatric care for the kids there. Freedom does not provide those services, but they collaborate with Rosecrans to get those services. Our Freedom therapists who are at our detention center 7 days a week, so that has been a big change for us and a huge improvement for us. They complete assessments and all the residents who come in provide CBT cognitive behavioral therapy groups with a rotating curriculum, so that it depends on what time of the year they rotate between a couple of different groups. They do individual therapy with our youth, they do crisis intervention, they do discharge planning, so when the youth is getting released, we talk about what services in the community we want to link them to, and we help the parents know what services the kids have received in the detention center and what they will be receiving or should receive when they get out. And then the last thing that they do for us is staff development and honestly therapeutic services for our staff. As you can imagine, working at the detention center is not an easy job. You know, it is very stressful. The kids that we have at the detention center have some pretty significant issues, you know, and sometimes we see that in acting out behavior. There are fights at the detention center. There are attacks on staff at the detention center. And it's a difficult environment. And so it has been helpful for us to have staff from Freedom there, so that if staff need to decompress after some kind of incident has occurred, they are there on hand to help us out. So to give you some numbers about the services that have occurred in 2024, we only broke down the services for the 3 therapists that are funded through the mental health board. We thought you might be most interested in those, so we brought those numbers to you. In 2024, we had 228 unique individuals served. So there are times when a youth may be in detention on multiple occasions throughout a year. This is individual numbers of youth. So this is not, it doesn't count a kid more than once if they came back for another visit at a different time. There were 972 individual sessions completed in 2024. And we had 430 youth attend group therapy sessions. So we talked about that a little bit, the rotating curriculum. There's seeking safety, and then DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. So we had 430 youth. Now, some of those might be double counted because a kid could have been in seeking safety and DBT. So I don't want to mislead on that, but both of those numbers were counted because they were in those group sessions. One of the things that we're looking forward to in this coming year is we have talked with our therapists and did some assessments on what we need at the detention center. And we want to do some processing groups to help the kids process different events that might occur at the detention center for them. So it might not be a specific curriculum like seeking safety, which is a trauma-informed group, like they're addressing trauma. This one is more processing. So when we do happen to have those younger youth in our detention center, our 13, 14-year-olds, we know the impact to those kids is greater when they're younger. And so we want to be able to provide some extra services and extra therapy to those kids. The other thing that we are doing is starting a processing group on visitation days. We have certainly noticed that those are difficult days for our youth because either, number one, they did get a visit and maybe heard some news about home that was difficult for them to process, or they didn't get a visit, and that can be certainly just as hard for them. And so we want to be able to provide some more support for them on those difficult days and help them be able to learn how to process their emotions. One of the things you may or may not have heard me talk about, because I feel like I talk about this all the time, is that our detention center, while in '92 was state of the art, it is not anymore. We are out of space. The things that we built, I should say we, it wasn't me, the things that the center was built for in '92 do not meet our current needs now. Back in '92, there were not therapeutic services for our youth. That was not a priority. We did not have the number of programming and outside providers coming in to provide services for our youth that we do now. And so our building doesn't meet the needs that we have currently. So I have presented on, I'd like to say on this several times to the board, to committee meetings, anybody who will listen and try and help us out, because we need more space at the detention center. So currently, our freedom therapists, the 3 therapists that we have, they are in a pod, which that means that is a cell area. We had to convert a small pod that we had into their office space. So literally, their desks are in a little area and the cells are right there. We don't have office space to give them. They don't complain, they're glad to just be there and be able to work forever, but it's certainly not a therapeutic environment. It is not ideal for them to be in a pod, and it's taking bed space away from us. Rosecrans, who is also incredibly flexible and generous with us, doesn't have an office space. So 99% of the time, they provide their services in the gym. We set up a table or we set up a desk, and they're in the gym providing those services. That is not a very therapeutic environment. It is not ideal. And our space is so limited, we are constantly having to shift and arrange, and they may be planning to be in the gym, but because we have to put the kids in the gym for gym class, we have to move them somewhere else. So, again, everybody is willing to work with us, but it's really not a therapeutic environment for these kids, and it's limiting for those people providing the services. We have one room in the facility called our quiet room, and that's where we have typically had programming for our youth in that room. But because of COVID, and things have changed, and we now do a lot of work virtually, which is not a bad thing in my perspective, because then we don't have to transport the kids. It's always risky to put a kid in the car and have to transport them. So we're not complaining about that, but it does require that we have a confidential space for them to be able to do that. And so that takes away one of our meeting spaces during the daytime. And then in the evening, we have limited programming that we are able to do because of lack of space. There is just not room for programming. We double utilize everything that we can. The classrooms that we do have in the evening, we try and use those for groups and things like that. But we do get offers from agencies in the community who ask us if they can come in and provide services. Most recently, we had Remedies, who was asking to come in and provide services, and we want those services. If they are therapeutic, if they are evidence-based, we want as much as we can have for these youth in our building, but only when we have space for them. So that is a concern, a difficulty for us. So those are some of our priorities that are highlighted in the box, but as you can see going down that list, there are other things that we have for our space needs. Currently, we have 2 classrooms at the detention center. We have 3 teachers. We need minimally 3 teachers to be able to teach our population, because there are restrictions about how many kids can be in a classroom. And so we've had to utilize the cafeteria for a 3rd classroom. Teachers make it work, but again, it's not an ideal space. And that takes away space that we could use for other purposes, like groups and things like that as well. Limited attorney-client meeting space during the day. Attorneys come out and they want to see their kids, they have to talk about court, things like that. We have 1 meeting room for that to happen. So if an attorney comes and somebody's already using that room, they have to wait. A lot of times we have service providers, we have Youth Service Network, who provides a ton of services for us at the detention center. They come out and they have to wait, or we might say, it might be a half hour, it might be an hour, and that is a waste of their time also to sit there. So that is a struggle for us. We had to convert one of our storage rooms into the PREA office. We have been going through what's called PREA certification. So PREA is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It is a certification that we hope to be awarded by the end of the month. We are very, very close to getting that. We had to have an office for our coordinator, and we had to take a storage room away to be able to get an office for her for privacy's sake. The limited visiting space, we kind of talked about that already, how we could have people coming out, whether it's other agencies, things like that. Even when families come out, we have to be very careful how we coordinate visiting. We are visiting on Fridays and Sundays, and we have to limit that because we don't have a lot of space to be able to host those visiting times. U of I currently has our contract for our medical providers, and so our nursing staff has an area that was built in 1992 and has not been updated since then. It is off of the laundry room, like literally you walk through the laundry room to get to the nursing area, not ideal. And our holding cells no longer meet those standards that we talked about on that previous slide. because there's no window and there's no camera in those rooms. So those are some of our needs. So I talk about our priorities at the detention center. Number one, we have been trying to increase our staffing. The county board has been very good to us in increasing our staffing levels. We currently have 8 vacancies at the detention center for staff. When we are not fully staffed, it impacts everything about operations at the detention center, because we have to maintain certain ratios with our kids at the detention center. So you can only have so many kids out in an area with a certain number of staff. Then take into account if a kid has a medical appointment that we have to take them off site for, that takes 2 staff. They have court, that takes 2 staff. So we have had to adjust our staffing levels, not only for just operational needs, but PREA certification that has required us to change some of our staffing. And so again, the county board has been very good to us in increasing those numbers for us, but we're still looking to hire, and that just impacts everything that we do. One of the other things that we have been working on for the last couple of months is we have been able to contract with an architecture firm called Venture to do a space needs study. So we are hoping that that will be done by the end of March. And that study will lay out for us how to best use the space that we have, the property around the detention center, so that we can look at if we can expand, how can we do that within the parameters of our property, and how to do that most efficiently and in different phases. So one of the things that we have stressed to the architects is that this project has to be able to be completed in different phases and in different steps, because as you'll see in just a minute, there are different ideas that we have and things that we would like to do to improve at the detention center, but we know we need to take that one step at a time and get the funding and get the approval to do all of those things. So we are looking at all different sources for money to be able to do not only the space needs study, but also for the expansion that we'll talk about here that we're hoping for. So here are some of the priorities. Phase 1 of our priority that we have talked to the architects about is, number 1, we need therapeutic spaces for our therapists at the detention center. Number 2, visiting meeting court spaces. A 3rd, dedicated classroom. New medical space or an expanded medical area that meets what it should for standards and their requirements. And then other things that we have as needs, parking. For those of you who've had an opportunity to go to our detention center, you know parking is a hot commodity. You could be parking down an alleyway. We don't have enough parking spots when we have shift change and even just on a normal day. Storage space, you can never have enough storage space at a place like that. And then bed space. We currently are okay in our capacity where we are with bed space. Today's population was 30. You saw our average for 2024 was 30, and we are at 46 beds. So we are okay with that, but we do need to allow for something like that in the event our population will raise in the future. Like, we can't take all of those beds away to be able to build the other things that we need. So the other stages, the phase 2, phase 3 of our priorities, we would like to relocate our assessment center to the juvenile detention site. Bear with me as I explain that a little bit. Our juvenile assessment center is located in the downtown campus in the juvenile justice building. So where the juvenile court building is, that's where the assessment center is. The assessment center is the place where law enforcement, when they have a juvenile that's been arrested or a lockout, they bring that juvenile to the assessment center where we process the juvenile at that location during the hours when we are open. So processing includes the normal things like a booking, fingerprinting, all of those kinds of things. But that also means that we have staff who are assigned to the assessment center, and they meet with the youth, and then the parents come in typically to pick up those kids, and we meet with the parents to assess what's going on with the youth at that time. What can we learn about that kid when they've had that first contact, or second maybe, with the law enforcement? And then we can make a referral to services to that youth right away at that first contact. And then we can also provide information to the state's attorney's office, so when they are reviewing that charge that the youth had, so they have additional information to try and decide should that youth be brought into court, not brought in court. And then the last thing they also do is they screen for detention. Sometimes when those youth come into the assessment center, they end up lodged at detention. And that's where it would be beneficial for us to move the assessment center to the detention center. So if a kid does need lodging, then we have to put them back into the car, drive them up to the detention center, and then drop them off there. Having that all in one location really only makes sense. The last thing that we would like to do for our priority here, this is the third priority, is reopen our day reporting center. This is a long-term goal that we have. We previously had a day reporting center, but due to funding cuts, I believe it was in 2008, that was closed. The day reporting center provides extra services for those youth that are not in custody. They could be kids that would transition out of detention, but maybe need a little extra support and eyes on them when they return home. So the day reporting center historically had been after school, and the kids would be given food, like we would feed them, we would teach them life skills, they would get tutoring, they would get therapeutic services, and then at the end of the evening, around 9 o'clock, we would drive them back home. So we filled some of that time that can be the highest risk for kids after school. We would like to be able to offer that to the community again. We just haven't been able to do that. So what we have done is we have expanded our JRIC program, which is our juvenile resource intervention. That's our therapeutic program. We have funding for our therapists from all of you, so thank you for that. They provide some services after school for the youth, but it's certainly not at all to the level of what our day reporting center would be. We would like, ideally, for that day reporting center to also be out at the detention center on that campus, on that property. So we would have all of those things in one location there. So that is what we've asked those architects to be able to lay out for us in different phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And that's where we are currently with our long-term plans for the detention center. So that is everything. Our ask, sorry, that's probably really long, but our ask from you guys is to help support us with that therapeutic space at the detention center. So what we are looking for support from you all is for those therapeutic offices and for the therapeutic group room, get some help in funding that build out for the detention center. What questions do you have?
I'll start. You're gonna do a space study, you said,
Yes,
which at some point will give you some costs.
correct.
How did you arrive at the number you arrived at that you present to us?
Yes, it's an estimate, to be honest, because we don't have that architectural number yet from them. So that was an estimate. We did have some conversations with them to say, what might that look like? But that is not a final cost.
Having said that, then, you could be faced with space study gives you a list of things you need, here's what you need, but the county says, nope, we're not gonna do it.
Yep.
Are you then proposing to still do this with this money?
Yes. Yes. We've been very clear with the architects that there could only be one part of this, or we could be lucky enough to have support for more than that. But we are only looking for this first step. We want them to propose a plan in incremental steps where they all build off of each other. We don't want them to have to redo anything. If we get the therapeutic money initially, then that needs to be able to be built upon later if we do get funding for the rest.
So this is the first step. I'm not good at construction, and I don't know everything how it works,
Sure.
but to my mind, it seems better to get the study or the whole picture and see if that can't be added into another part of it for a lot less cost, if you follow my thinking. In other words, this is a standalone $2 million. If you've got a $12 million project that you get funding for, this may come down to $750,000 because you're only adding 4 rooms. Follow my thinking on that?
That could be, you're right. I mean, like you said, I too am not an architect and I'm not into construction. And so what you're saying may be true. What I have to do is rely on those architects to be able to give me the breakdown of those things. We know we need more space at detention. We know like that first list of priorities, we know we need that. And so we wanted this area to be built in with that. So it would lessen the chance of what you were saying. If that makes sense.
Do you have any idea of the county funding, how they're looking at this proposal? Is there any idea what they're thinking at this point in time? As to whether they could fund part of it? Don't know.
What they have been supportive of is the space needs study because they really wanted to see the breakdown of what those costs would be. So that was our first step, and that was, in my opinion, the first win was to have the support to be able to do that study.
Okay, thank you.
Should we be waiting until you have that study to deal with this issue?
That would certainly be an option. We are hoping, like I said, to be able to get that study back in the next month.
Okay.
I guess I don't know, and maybe I should know this, but I don't know if there's a timeline on these awards that we have to have it in sooner than that or not. But we're hoping that will be done shortly.
Thank you. It's good for that.
You mentioned the responsibilities of the Winnebago County Board being generous with you guys thus far. What are the possible requirements and responsibilities for the city of Rockford and or monies from the state of Illinois?
Good questions. So I can easily answer, or more easily answer the state of Illinois part of that. So that administrative office of Illinois Courts that we talked about, the governing body that we have, that is funded through the state of Illinois. AOIC provides to us vouchers for our staffing levels at the detention center. So what happens with AOIC is they say, we have this much money we will provide for your personnel costs, not benefits, but the salary of those officers. So they do provide to us funding for those things. They are not currently funding all of our staff by any means, but I do know that that is a goal of theirs, is to get to 100% funding for our personnel. I hope for the next budget, but I don't know that that's going to happen. The city of Rockford is not a contributing source for our detention center.
First, the slides. If you can get that sent to us, I'd like to see a little bit more detail. I know a couple of us want to see those slides that you had put up there. So
Oh,
I'd like to
certainly,
see
yeah,
in more detail and review that.
absolutely.
Second, having been to the assessment center myself many times and the detention center more times, the assessment center, it makes sense. Yes, get it all under one roof. I agree, totally agree. But what will happen to the assessment center down there? It's a fairly large space.
It is.
And it can hold, those kids who have committed a crime, it can hold them. So what's gonna happen to that space then?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And there's a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. There are lots of different thoughts on what could happen to that. So let's say we are fortunate enough to get funding from the county board or other sources for phase 1, phase 2, but not for that day reporting center. And they say, we can't do that. We would try and shift that day reporting center into that space.
Okay.
The juvenile courts have that space in their eye for another courtroom. They are really in need of another courtroom. I know that they would love for me to be able to say, we're not using it here, you can have that.
Okay.
So there's definitely things that area.
Anybody else?
So it's not necessarily any questions for her, but just posing ideas for the board. This is something that is really needed for Winnebago County. Just like she said, City of Rockford doesn't contribute anything to that. So the building itself is required by the state of Illinois. So the state of Illinois forces Winnebago County to have that building. And it's under District 17.
With 17th Circuit.
17th Circuit. So that includes parts of, Boone County and some of Stevenson County.
It's just Boone and Winnebago.
Just Boone and Winnebago. So those are the only contributed counties, and the county has to fund that. So we're looking, we want the needs study, the space study, just because we're landlocked over there. And so it's a possibility that we cannot add on, and we have to build a whole new facility. So either way it goes, it'd be great to have funds from the mental health board for the therapeutic side of the detention center. Even if we allocate it now, the way we pay, we only pay what's needed. And so if we could allocate that money now, that would be great. And then if it is come in at a lower price, we only pay that price anyway. But you know, the 2 million mark, I guess, is good if that's what she just estimated. I'm guessing it's going to be more than that, just based off of typical construction and the way construction moves nowadays, especially with legacy costs, and it hasn't been presented yet. So it'd be great if the board really presents, award the detention center for those funds in advance, so we can have something to go on, especially to present to the county board with ways of funding this, because the county still has to figure out ways to fund this, even if we have to build a new detention center.
Are you saying it is mandated by the state?
It's mandated by the
Okay,
state.
so it's a unfunded thing.
It's unfunded. So we're looking to get a portion of that, you know, from Boone County as well.
So Boone County will pay for part of it too then?
We don't know that.
Okay.
But we're going to try to get them to pay a part. But it's the Circuit 17 court district, so we're in charge of that area. So
Is there any way we can find out what Boone County's plan is before we make a final decision as well?
no, because all responsibility lies on Winnebago County, and that's why we were looking for the needs study. So all our decisions will be made after the needs study. But some things like we're funding now just because it's mandatory, like updates that we mandatory, but there's still a possibility that even though we put $5 million into the building, that we still have to tear the building down and get to the building.
But we can find out before we do all that, right?
Yeah,
With the needs study.
Yeah, if I can provide a little update, Boone County, when they do utilize our facility, they do pay a per diem. So while that certainly by no means covers the operational costs of the building, they do contribute when they utilize that. Currently, as of today, 30 kids, as of this morning, we did anyway, maybe it's changed. We have one Boone County youth that is in there. So it's not a large portion that they use, but they do have to pay for that on a daily rate for us. The other thing I think it might be important to clarify is that not every circuit has a detention center. There are only 15 detention centers in the state. So the detention center operates under that authority of the chief judge. He is the one who technically would say, yes, you have a center, no, you don't have a center. But if we didn't have a detention center, we would have to try and find beds for all 30 of those kids, of 29 that we have and we are responsible for throughout the state. I can tell you that that is not an easy task by any means, because the detention centers are all facing similar struggles in their staffing levels, being close to capacity, those kinds of things. We regularly receive calls from other counties asking us to take their kids in. I mean, we do take Boone in, but we have gotten calls from all over and way far south in Illinois. They will drive their kids 6-7 hours because they can't find a spot to put kids. So it's really not very realistic for us to think that we could find beds for all 30 of the kids in other facilities. And also, it's not inexpensive. You know, if the county, for example, their per diem is about $500 a day. So doing, and they're by far the highest, so that's an extreme example. Most are around $150 to $200 a day for their per diems. But when you think about 30 kids, that adds up very, very quickly.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? Okay, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you, everyone. And if anybody does want to come see the detention center, please feel free to reach out. I would be glad to meet you.
All right, good,
Okay,
thank
thank
you so
you.
much. We went over a little bit of time in the presentations, but I think they were deserving of subject. Okay, monthly activities.
Sure, and just a reminder, Emily will be sending a follow-up email to all of you, so please, based on the presentations today, put any additional commentary you have in your evaluations for these proposals, as that will help it be prepared for a decision. On monthly activity, let me brief, since we're a little behind on time here. The main thing I want to notify you of is that the Behavioral Health Advisory Committee group consultant project has officially launched and kicked off. And it looks like it'll be a pretty fast timeline on that. So I'm anticipating that that consultant group will come and present to this board probably like in May or June, what their findings are and what maybe their preliminary recommendations are looking like. So I'll just keep you updated on that and get them slotted in when appropriate.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay, all right. So then, folks, let's move on to minutes of last month's meeting. So if I could have a motion, please, to have those minutes accepted.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, and Terry, second. Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes from last month for January, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing nothing, they're approved. Thank you. Okay, so then we move to some resolutions. And so now we're going to vote on authorizing the resolution for first one is the resolution authorizing budget updates for several of our agencies. The first one being for the Rockford Barbell program, and the fact that they have sent in and asked for our approval for reassigning some of the budget within there. You want to comment on that?
I think this one was pretty basic. It was just under budget in a couple of areas and reallocation of funds towards equipment. I think there's a pretty detailed description in there. And also a representative from that organization is available to answer questions if you have any.
If you have no questions, then I'm going to ask for a vote for approving the changes that are being requested. Pardon me? Need a motion. Okay, thank you. Second, okay, Jeff and Tim.
So who's first? Jeff?
Jeff, okay. So we had a motion to accept the changes that have been recommended for the Rockford Barbell Association. Since it's money, so let's go through our list. Pardon? I'm sorry? Yeah, thank you very much. Mariana Body, Edrell, Shaw,
Yes.
okay, Dr. Copeland,
Yes.
okay, Dr. Giardini,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindmark,
Yes.
and Mr. Neighbors,
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen,
Yes.
Dr. Penny.
Yes.
Thank you. And Richard Clement, yes. Okay. So approved. All right, then we have a second request for change in the budget. This one is from Youth Services. Oh, sorry.
This should be the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office.
And again, essentially the same issues as you know. The Winnebago County approved $1.7 million, and so they're asking, and that's really what we're being asked for, is and a change in that amount to $92,000 now.
So in this particular program, if you recall, in the first 2 years of programming, in the contract, we didn't really have any specific language about a deadline for submitting payments. So it's kind of just lesson learned. We didn't have any issues with it, but moving forward, wanted to have a deadline for the contract so that we didn't get, payment requests in 10 years from now from something in the first year of programming, right? You can't budget for that sort of thing. So those have been added to the contracts, and it's essentially 6 months after the close of the program deadline. Unfortunately, with this program, they had in between some staffing changes, missed an invoice for food and behavioral health that never got submitted to us. And now that it is past the contract deadline, it will require a board vote to essentially authorize that payment. So in terms of our vetting of it, it's a legitimate cost that was approved. It's just past the deadline for submissions and needs an authorization. I believe there's a representative from that program available if you have any additional questions.
So I need a motion. Okay. Second. Okay, Ardell? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded, and that we accept the modifications in the contract with the county. Any questions that we need to ask before I vote? Hearing none. Okay. Ardell, Bradshaw,
Yes.
Dr. Copeland,
Yes.
Dr. Giardini,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindmark,
Yes.
Mr. Neighbors,
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen,
Yes.
Dr. Penny,
Yes.
Mr. Connor, yes. All right, so it's been moved and approved. Okay. All right. So let's move to, now we have several more resolutions that we have to deal with today. All right. In this case, whereas the Winnebago County Mental Health Board received 2 applications requesting funding totaling $188,500, up to $10 million is available for funding of the accelerator awards. And whereas the Winnebago County Mental Health Board members reviewed, evaluated, and scored 2 applications according to established scoring rubrics that were published alongside the notice of funding opportunity, and developed recommendations for these organizations and programs. Now therefore be it resolved by the Winnebago County Mental Health Board as follows. And the 2 organizations are, first of all, the Youth Services Network. There's been approval for an award of $115,000. And the second one is Live for Lowry Incorporated Mobile Harm Reduction Outreach Program Recovery Services for an amount of $73,500. And so this resolution needs to be receive a vote from us. And so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Neighbors and Dr. Giardini. All right, so for approval, Ardell Bradshaw?
Are we approving both of them at one time?
Yes, ma'am.
Both at one time?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Copeland?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Giardini?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindmark?
Yes.
Mr. Neighbors?
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen?
Yes.
Dr. Penny?
Yes.
And Richard Quinn, yes. Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much for going through that. Okay. I think we're done with the discussion there, okay? All right. Discussion, do we have any issues that anyone, yes, I don't.
For the sake of time, I had a letter I wanted to read, but for the sake of time, I will just touch on it and maybe we can further discuss it at the next meeting. Right now, is a lot of information on local news and what have you concerning housing in the area, in the city of Rockford and or throughout the county. And I'd like to point out that the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board, when looking at the mission statement and the purpose statement, specifically talks about the fact that we are to plan, review, and inform the community about severe mental illnesses and substance abuse issues. And I believe one of the populations that is being grossly underserved is the severe mental illness that we are seeing so rampant in our city that are also homeless. Okay. It appears that they are being recycled through the criminal justice system. I believe that when individuals are being released from the criminal justice system, it is very important to provide housing that is an extension of the criminal justice system, because unfortunately, many people with mental health issues don't know that they actually have issues. And a lot of people don't understand that. They don't know they're sick, they don't think they're sick, so they don't take their medications, they don't follow through on support services. And so if we have some type of stabilization housing that they can participate in so that we can get them stable and then let them go out and seek other community support services. So I'd like to see us as a board do some research and possible planning for some of those supports for those people in our community.
We have, you know, as you know, we grant money to resources of the city, and they've got, what, 4 or 5 people who are tasked with finding and working with homeless people, particularly for the population that you just described, serious mentally ill people. So, you know, maybe what we ought to do is ask Ms. Walker to come and talk to us next month to see, because she's the source of the single entry into the system. Would that be helpful to have?
Yeah, I believe it would be, but you know, getting phone calls from people, being downtown, seeing all of the individuals milling about, seeing security over there at the library to keep individuals who are currently homeless from coming in the library.
Okay.
And there seems to be a waiting list for every support service that is out there.
Okay. Well, then fine, let's find out.
So I'm wondering, as part of the discussion, and so thank you for bringing that up, and obviously the city has the, what was just mentioned earlier today, the Northern Homeless Coalition, Northern Illinois Homeless Coalition, so there's groups around, so maybe with our convening power, I think it would be good to have someone come and speak to us, but I think might be an opportunity for us, along with some of the other things that we've been seeing in terms of some of the most recent applications for accelerator awards. I wonder if there's a way that we could be more targeted in how we're asking for programming, so that, I'm not saying like RFP, but if we know that there's a particular issue, this is what we've been doing in a certain way, but I'm wondering if there's a way we can ramp it up with more specificity, the types of things that we're trying to fund that will have the greatest impact for these types of populations. What I mean by that is, I'm looking at some of the things that come through in the last few months as we've been dealing with accelerator awards. They're not, we've said some no's to some things that might have been good programs, but they weren't targeted toward what we're actually trying to get at. And I'm wondering if there's a way we can articulate better or sort of give more guidance in terms of, hey, we're looking to fund something that's going to address this issue. And not shoehorn your way into it, but you're actually addressing it. I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but I think I think there's an opportunity, not just to bring people in to sort of help us to understand better, but a better way for us to articulate what we're trying to fund.
And would it also be good to ask the Jubilee Center to come in and see how they can collaborate? Because they do house homeless people with mental health issues, and they receive funding from us.
Well, and we also just had close friends. There are a number of providers, right, large scale, so they, and stepping stone, so, which, again, between those two agencies of over 200 people, plus then we have what's supposed to be the single point of entry. And Dr. Penny, you work with another group of people.
Yeah, I'm on the GYH committee for housing of homeless individuals with Angie and with all Officer Joel Gibbons was on our board with us. And then Remedies had some people coming, the Veterans Drop-In Center, I don't know if they've attended those meetings, but I have been at city neighborhood planning meetings with Barb and with Sean West too. And so we discussed that a lot, and we do have like a master landlord list with open properties. But like you said, it's really hard when someone doesn't know that they have mental illness, and especially like I've gotten people housed that, because that's what I do full time is house homeless people that have attacked the landlords, that have brought in other squatters who then scare off the other tenants in the building or rob them or knocking on their doors.
And I think we need to be specific about this. This is not just about housing, it's about stabilization. And I'm going to use the word that appears to be the boogeyman word, Singer Mental Health Center. Ever since Singer Mental Health Center closed down, aside from that facility closing, and then include the population increase, we've seen more homeless people on our streets. And so when we're talking about stabilization, we're talking about housing that requires an individual to take their medications, to participate in counseling, to participate in peer groups. You know, that's what we're talking about, not just the housing piece of it. Yes.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, it's like just, but with state law, we can't, like, just like you said, the required part, we can't force anybody to get mental health services. And so that's the main issue with trying to help the homeless, is because we can't force them to get the help. We can offer the help, and, you know, just like Jason is in the group that he's with is following California state law, you know, to where they're trying to get more leeway to where we can get more access. I mean, more laws to help the mentally ill. So, if Jason wants to speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's been one of the recurring conversations through the state association, the Mental Health Board State Association, ACMI, about essentially the involuntary admission standards. And California is one of the states where they have expanded those standards beyond, you know, what Illinois has. There was, you know, different groups that advocated for it and different groups that advocated against it. But that has been something the state association has been looking at because of the lack of, again, state hospital infrastructure, the issues with multiple counties finding seriously mentally ill in jails, unfit to stand trial, waiting. Some sheriff's offices, not happening locally, I don't believe those sheriff's offices that are suing the state of Illinois because they have people waiting on fitness in the jail and they can't get into the state hospital because there's no availability. And so they're well past the deadline of what they're required to do for fitness restoration. So that's kind of been an issue. One place where I've seen a promising model is Miami-Dade County, where they've been kind of looking at this issue. Judge down there's been a champion for this for like several decades, and they've kind of, in addition to their specialty courts, created reentry programming that's embedded in supported housing. I think, again, different population size, but I think they are building a facility that has like 200 permanent housing beds available. And it's totally integrated with their kind of criminal justice reentry programming. So I think there's a lot of groups we convene and can look at. That's a model I would want to explore as well in terms of who's kind of on the cutting edge of innovation.
I know they're doing it across the country. There's a couple organizations that are collaborating, New York, California, Ohio, and they are basically looking at, we have to focus on, like one of the mothers that spoke, we have to focus on protecting the person, not the disability. We court order individuals to have drug and alcohol drops. There, I believe, has to be some legal loopholes. If we can force them not to use certain substances, there should be a way that part of their criminal justice activity that we can focus on them taking the medications that they need.
So we might need to bring, so I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that what you're getting at can be done. And I think that if it can be done, it can be done here, because we're small enough that we can innovate. But to your point, not only the individuals you've already talked about, and obviously we probably need to get the court system, the chief judge or whoever involved too, because there's more than one lever that we can pull. Obviously, while we're working on what the state laws might be, there might be things already in the law that we're not taking advantage of if everybody was on the same page in terms of dealing with the issue.
I think from what I've heard from all of you, I think your point's well taken, necessity. It can't be a short presentation here.
No.
It's gotta be much bigger where everybody's invited
Right.
and they all get a chance to talk and
Right.
see how they can work together, but I think it's much bigger.
Right.
It's gotta be done, I'm not thinking the right thing,
Right.
but I think we need a bigger.
No, I agree. We have the power to convene, so I think that we need to talk about this as an issue of seeing what we could do.
I would also suggest we might consider inviting Scott Block, who's the administrator for courts and behavioral health. He's kind of looking at this as a statewide issue, so he's seeing the trends across communities, he's seeing the best practice solutions, he's participating in the national network and conversation. He is coming to help convene in partnership with our board and also with the coordinated justice, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, sequential intercept mapping update, so it might be a good piggyback conversation to that. Again, I think there's a lot of local groups that could be convened as well, but he's definitely one of the leading state voices in this, and he used to be the executive director of the McHenry County Mental Health Board, so I think he understands what can happen on a local level with local funding as well. And so if the board wanted, I'd also be happy to invite him to present. I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. He's been involved with a lot of the things happening in courts in Winnebago as well, in his role through the state.
What if we set this for next month's discussion? Hopefully we have a few more members here, but also everybody can bring in their ideas as to who should be here, how we should do it, the time involved, we go from there. All our members.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's great.
Okay. Good topic. Thank you. All right, I would,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you very much.